start us off here.
Yeah.
Come on and start us off on Super Bowl for next year.
These are my impressions. So the idea. So Cleveland was 50. What was Pittsburgh on that list?
Like 80, which is kind of like, I don't know who the quarterback's going to be, but I mean that can't be their
I have a
true
lot
price,
of ways
right?
to frame these questions. Why don't we do KC and San Francisco first? I think that's a good way to do it. We're already halfway through the segment too. Can either of them get back to the game? Is it realistic they get back to the game? Would I bet them to get back to the game and win? Both teams, the answer to all the questions except the last one is yes. Can both of them get back to the game next year? Absolutely. Could both of them win the Super Bowl next year? Of course. San Francisco may end up having the best team again because, as Eric mentioned, Purdy is still on this contract and KC has Mahomes. So the answer to all this has to be yes. Would you ever bet it? I think what you'd be looking for right now, and this will be the same conversation in June that it is today, which is you want to bet a price that you think is going down and you know why, and not just because you like it. So, for example, I think the Niners can definitely win the Super Bowl next year. They were an absolute monster of a team that's going to have a ton back. The quarterback will be back. It's still early in his time with Shanahan. It makes a lot of sense that they could at least get back to the game. Can they win the game? I don't know. Are they definitely going to get back? I don't know. But they make all the sense in the world. They're also the favorite and they're 5-1. And just to put this in perspective, excuse me, at the start of the postseason, the Chiefs went off at the start of the playoffs this year. The team that won went off at 11 or 12 or something like that, I think. Maybe even higher than that in some places. So the idea that you would bet 5 now when you could get better than 5 a lot probably during the season or the same price is a terrible bet. And you could be like, well, I love the Niners and I know they're going to win. Great. Bet some other stuff for 6 months and then come back and bet them at 5 because it'll still be there because they'll still be the favorite. Do some other stuff for a little time.
Another soul-crushing Super Bowl loss for San Francisco. 3 now in 11 years. 2 coached in the last 4, obviously, by Kyle Shanahan. This is the first one, though, with Brock Purdy. As you start to project the 49ers moving forward, and there's some discourse happening, as we speak right now, that the Chiefs may have kind of solved Purdy, a la what Belichick did to Jared Goff in the Super Bowl when Goff was the Rams quarterback a couple of years ago. And what the Ravens did, correct, on Christmas night in San Francisco. When you project San Francisco forward now, is this where is the window? Ajar, open, shut for the San Francisco 49ers with this current constitution of the team moving forward?
Yeah, the current markets, which aren't taking big limits, have them favored. We at Sumer Sports have them a little less favored, and there's been money on the Chiefs today. I've noticed that have pushed them down from 15-2 to 13-2 in some places, which has been a thing. I think their window, guys, is 1 year. Purdy is on the third year. Either they're going to have to pay him or he's going to suck next year. Either way, that's going to be a pivot point. They have 5 players who are not quarterbacks who are going to make $20 million or $20 million against the cap next year. They're $3 million over, which means that they either have to move on from guys like Williams, Kittle, Hargrave, guys like that, or they have to basically write extensions that prorate more money into the future, which again means that guys like Trent Williams and so forth are going to be on the team once they're aged out and not as good anymore. And this was already a team that lacked depth, as we saw in the secondary, offensive line, and to a lesser extent defensive line, which I thought they played terrifically yesterday on the defensive line. So it's probably 1 year. I think that 1 year before Ayuk's deal is up, 1 year before Purdy needs to get an extension of some sort, and 1 year where they're still going to be paying 10 football players more than $10 or $15 million to play for them. And that's the rookie quarterback window. And once that closes, you either have to find another quarterback, which is almost always a coin flip as to whether or not he's going to be good enough to run the offense, or you have to pay him, which is another probably less than coin flip, that he's going to be effective once you have to pay him and not other players around him. So this was a devastating loss for the 49ers. There's no way to sugarcoat it. They were the best team in the NFL in the point spread market all year. And this was an opportunity to win one when their chief competitors, namely the Chiefs, Bengals, Ravens, all of them were either called lower than expected or were underachieving like the Chiefs were this year.
I promised earlier in the show I was going to place a bet live on the air. I then placed it in a break and didn't talk about it in the segment. So like I probably broke some rules on that one. I bet the Browns to win the Super Bowl next year at 50-1. So just for people who are like, you said you were going to bet on the air. Yeah, and it's like, why did I bet them? Because I think they're going to be absolutely awesome next year. If a guy who's won Coach of the Year twice, made the playoffs twice, once with Baker Mayfield and once with Joe Flacco, and now if he gets like half of what Deshaun Watson was, they're better. And they already have like a top 3 defense. This is pretty easy to understand. Not that they're going to win, just that they're 50 and like the Bears are 35. Does anybody understand how that makes no sense? Part of this is going to be the AFC teams are all awesome, so the Browns are going to be a longer price, whereas it's easier for the Bears to make it. But even though it's easier for the Bears to make it, they're not, and there's still a chance the Browns are. So like that would be the comparison there. And I think the price is likely to be less when we get to the start of the season. Just a guess. I don't think they're going to be 50 when the week 1 games kick off. That seems really unlikely to me versus some of the other teams. So that's why I bet them right now. Not sure they're going to win, but that's the bet I'd make. My championship game predictions for next year, way too early. I said Chiefs at Browns, and I didn't say who hosted. I'll say Lions at Packers, but Packers at Lions makes a lot of sense too. What are your predictions?
I think I'll go with in the AFC. I think the young team that's likely to break through with like the new guard, Ken, that you talked about is Houston. Just if like Stroud's that guy. And this is like way too early. We'll put this in pencil, not pen. I'll say Texans Chiefs in the AFC Championship game next season without knowing obviously a lot of information.
They're going to win enough games?
How about this? Chargers Texans. Chiefs don't make it.
Oh, and which of those teams beat them?
Chargers.
Yeah. Like Chargers like slay Mahomes so everybody else can make it and win, but they won't make it yet.
And then they lose to Houston, and Houston goes to the Super Bowl, where they would play.
What? go to the Super Bowl. Who would they play in the Super Bowl? Texans who?
Packers.
And we're going to do this again next year. That's good. They, to be fair, they went over. They made the playoffs. We were right.
I'll say I think the Rams have a chance to be like outrageously good next season.
Because they like turned over the defense with the young players, so now they're kind of cooking
and
again. The
like,
offense is obviously really good.
They're not really like rebuilding anymore now. Like you still have Stafford, you still have McVay, Kyron, Nakua, Kupp, like good young defensive players. Like they're gonna be nasty next year. Like their win total is gonna be like 9.5.
Yeah, you nailed that in the offseason. They're like, hey, this is the most interesting win total of any team, because like it could go in so many directions. Well, it went in a really positive one. What was it, 6.5? They like flew over that number, obviously, and made the playoffs. You don't get many teams where it's like a middle of the pack win total. They go over it by like 5 games. You don't really get that very often. It doesn't happen that much. Okay, that's good. Texans Packers pretty wild. That matchup you probably get a lot on. I like Houston a lot. I just think it's like not yet. I think they're just still a little early. But like when I say a little early, I mean like for them and the Chargers, it's probably not next year, but it's absolutely the year after that for both of them. And maybe they can be early. Some teams are early sometimes, and it's tough to predict these things. But they are on the escalator. They're on the escalator on the way up. I just don't know if they're at the top yet. And I saw like more than usual. I feel like a lot of people who do gambling content place what apparently for them was like a really like an uncomfortable amount of money on San Francisco to win the game. Oh, and my concern is not that my concern is partly that they did that if it really was an uncomfortable sum of money, because that shouldn't really happen. Gamble responsibly. But part of it, my concern is that the only reason they did that was that they felt like everyone was on Kansas City. And like maybe this game can really act as like kind of a tent pole for the idea that sports are more random than people think. And maybe it can't, because people are going to be like, well, Taylor Swift, like it was rigged so that they were going to win, and whatever. And but in terms of San Francisco, there's always this notion. And look, I'm always curious what everyone's betting too. Like I'm curious. Oh, like who's everyone betting in the Super Bowl? That's interesting. Everyone's betting Kansas City. But then at the same time, if it pivots to, well, what am I betting in the Super Bowl? What am I putting my actual money on? I don't think that information has a place in that discussion. I think it has a place in just a fun discussion about sports and what people are betting on. I think it absolutely has a place in that. I'm curious about that stuff too. Who's everybody on? Oh, okay. Like, wow, really? Like everybody likes this? But at the same time, then when it comes time for me to put my money on something, that's where you lose me a little bit. And just whenever in the future we get to a situation where it seems like everyone is on something in any event, and you are inclined upon hearing that to either question your own opinion on the game or to bet the opposite side solely for that reason, let's just please remember, the Super Bowl, the biggest game of the year in any sport, the biggest betting market, the thing with the most money's bet, where there would be, you would think, the most interest in who everyone's on and the most acceptance of this philosophy. Oh, the public's on this. And in this case, the public, the billions and billions and billions of that. This is in a college basketball game tonight. And yet, despite that, and despite just an incredible ton of money coming in on Kansas City, they won the game anyway. Because you know what? It doesn't matter. Because it's too random. The game goes to overtime. Come on.